Hello, I'm Willow, and in a few days and/or today, depending on how editing goes, I will publish a book. I've worked on this since May 4th of 2023, so today I want to make a video talking about the characters, what inspired it, rejected plot lines, how it evolved over time, themes, how it affected my life, and other things. I'm gonna try to put as little spoilers as possible. However, I do feel anything from the prologue and the first 6 chapters is free game. Most of that is world building and character building. In fact, when I wrote the first draft, I did just try to skip over it. For the basic overview, I'm going to read what is on the back of my book and tell you anything it missed as overview. I don't feel like writing another script for this when there's already one available. Smokey struggled with belonging since birth. The stars gifted her, in her opinion, cursed her with the ability to see ghosts, and because of that, everyone sees her as a freak. After her pack burned down, she watches as her adoptive mom, the only wolf that ever treated her like she belonged, die, and she knows she'll never fit in again. Flair, on the other hand, has always fit in. Her father is the alpha and her mom loved by the whole pack. She has a group of close friends and she could want nothing more. Well, nothing more than her sister who died of a cold. So, when Flair finds this unique, mysterious pup who refuses to share anything about her life, she's intrigued. The two sisters explore the meaning of motherhood, sisterhood, and true family over the course of a war with the Shadowclaw pack. And one thing this doesn't quite miss, but doesn't quite explain perfectly, is power. The ancient wolves are essentially the gods of the world, and if you descend from these gods, you have the powers that have been passed down for generations. There are 6-ish, 7-ish ancient wolves, and they give powers to their ancestors. Some powers are cool, some lame, some cause strain, others cause gain. You can't control what powers you inherit, which is why Smokey has issues, but Flair, who also descends from an ancient wolf, goes dancing through life. I think a good place to start this video is the origin, so let's start from the beginning. My story starts in 2022 when I started 6th grade. At this point, I'd only just gotten my main friend group the year prior. I wouldn't say I really knew any of them all that well, but I was particularly close with one of them. We'll call them Sabrine. The main reason we were close was that we shared a near identical schedule, whereas everyone else I only had 1 or 2, or in some cases, no classes with them. And I can't quite remember which ones, but it doesn't matter. And I had, over the past few years, checked out Warrior Cats books. Not because I read Warrior Cats, but because the school librarian forced me to check out a book every time we visited, and I wanted her to shut up. Warrior Cats was something I would realistically read, so it's what I checked out even though I didn't read it. I couldn't tell you the name of the main character at the time, I couldn't tell you anything. But Sabrine did read Warrior Cats, and she had a fan fiction idea, and she wanted the entire friend group to be involved. We all made our own OCs, we worked together, and we had a blast on it. I was Riverstorm, Ren, you may know them as Remy, was Appleleaf, and Bramble Clan was born. In order to help with this fan fiction, I had to actually read the source material, so I started reading SkyClan's Destiny. And then, once the library got the other books back from people checking them in, I started reading those too. I was in the fanfiction specifically charged with writing a book called Strawberry Stem's Wish, which was meant to be inspired by Blue Star's prophecy. And I was specifically paired with Ren. At the time, I didn't know them all that well, but I was paired with them to work on the book, and I'm really glad in the end that happened. Well, after a year of working on Warrior Cats fan fictions, we were in the library and Sabrine proposed a fun challenge, one of which I'm incredibly grateful for. She said that it'd be cool if we could see whether her and Ren, or me and Finley, could write a better book by the end of 8th grade. This challenge was proposed on May 4th of 2023, and I latched onto this quickly. At first, me and Finn were going to write a story based on an assignment we did in 5th grade together of 2 girls in the colonial time going to the colonies. But Finley dropped out of this challenge about a week or 2 later, and then I dropped the idea of the colonial-inspired book entirely. But I stayed in the challenge without a partner because I wanted to. Mere weeks after that, my book Moondust was born, or at least the idea. Over the next year or so, I was in the brainstorming phase. I didn't realize I was in this phase, as every time I picked up a pen, or in my case, a Chromebook, to write my book, it always ended with me hating it and a week later deleting it, but I would write a chapter 1 and a chapter 2. I really wish I didn't delete those in hindsight, as these earlier drafts, while terrible, are still pieces of my writing, and but I went through many iterations before finally on April or May of 2025, I locked in and started writing notes. Then throughout the school year of 2025 to 2026, I finished writing most of the book. This school year, most of what I was doing was editing, and then finally I published it this summer. I really wanted to do a segue to the prior versions, but I quickly realized in order for you to understand the prior drafts, you do need to know the characters. I've made a few character rant videos and I plan to make more, but what I realized with these characters is I never made proper notes for the story, and the notes I did initially make not only were terrible, but overall inaccurate to the characters, and they are also gone. I used to be so insecure I'd delete anything I felt was unworthy of sunlight, and I greatly regret that now. Now I do have a template for how I write characters, but even then, by the time I made it, I already knew these characters so well, and my friends knew these characters so well, it felt silly and unnecessary to make notes on them. We already know who I'm talking about, why am I telling you? But you don't know these characters, and the notes is usually what I base my rant videos about. So here, I'm going to tell you the notes I'd make based on my characters. There are many characters in my books, but the only ones I'll be doing an in-depth talking on are Smokey, Flare, Rebecca, Birch, Badger, Asher, Fang, and then the most basic description of every other character, as well as a family tree. On average, my character template is as follows. First, I figure out their name. Sometimes these names have meanings and depths and reasonings, and sometimes they are just because I think the name sounded cool. Both of these are equally valid naming systems. Sometimes the name doesn't need to tell you everything about the character. Smokey's name, though, does tell you something. Let's start with the spelling. The first thing that jumps out about her is that her name is spelled S-M-O-K-E-E instead of S-M-O-K-E-Y. I was originally gonna spell it S-M-O-K-E-Y, but my friend was helping me write the notes. I asked her to work on Smokey's notes. She wrote S-M-O-K-E-E after a YouTuber the two of us watched at the time, Smokey B. It was meant to be a one-off joke, but I didn't correct it at the time, and then it was written like that more and more, and then I started writing it like that, and then eventually it was too late. By the time I got to the first draft of the book, I knew it was going to be spelt like that. I was originally going to spell it like that and then replace it at the end with S-M-O-K-E-Y, but it was so ingrained into my reflex, and that's what my friends view her as. They've read passages upon passages of her being Smokey with a double E. Her name is just spelled Smokey. There's nothing changing that now. It's too late. Now let's talk about what her name actually means about her. Smokey is named after smoke because it's thick and cloudy and it doesn't let you see in. One thing about Smokey from day one of writing her is that she's a recluse and outcasted, and she never lets anyone in. She is adopted into the main pack, so she doesn't feel like she belongs. She lies constantly, because she thinks telling the whole truth makes her feel naked and exposed. Another reason she is named Smokey is because she's adopted by the alpha of the pack. And from the alpha family of the pack, all usually named something fire related. There's Flare, Flame, Scorch, Spark. The only one that's not named Fire is Mist, who marries into the family, Sandy, who marries into the family, and Sunset, because I was pushing the definition of fire. Smokey is close enough to fire that it works for the theme, but far enough that it is very clear she was adopted. I think that is the most we can learn from her name, though. The next thing that is usually on my list is mental disorders the characters had. I originally planned for her to have ADHD and RSD, but after I got to know her, neither of these felt necessary to her story. The only thing I would say Smokey does have is anxiety. While it wouldn't be severe, she does have it. Then I do a basic description of appearance and personality. Smokey is a black wolf with green eyes, a scar across her right eye, a scar on her front paw. As for personality, she is stubborn, she doesn't believe others will fully accept her, and she sort of has a victim complex sometimes, but I try to keep it from being obnoxious as it isn't meant for attention, she just is generally a hopeless character. Then I look into character type. Smokey is a protagonist, she's a round character, and she is dynamic. Next, I go for the most defining characteristic, something I want the reader to know about the character without me ever describing her as that. And I've never thought about it for Smokey because, again, I am writing these notes as I am writing the script. These aren't written for the book, but I'd have to say strong-willed, because despite the things she goes through, she ultimately survives. And while her hopelessness is there, she never loses her will to live. I'm skipping over the next few because there isn't much to say on them, but one I'm not going to skip is inspo character. I unfortunately don't remember every character that inspired her, or any for that matter, but Smokey is one of my few self-insert characters, so I guess me? Obviously she is different from my story and does a lot of things differently than I would do them, because she's a more drastic version of me. She also has different experiences, but she is essentially a version of what I've felt in my everyday life while I wrote the book. She is an angsty, more dramatic outlet for my emotions and how I feel. Next is powers. Not all my characters in this book have powers, but if you're a descendant of one of the 6 ancient wolves, as I said earlier, you're born with powers. I actually made a chart about this, which I'll probably show on screen. Smokey got the ability to see wolves, and she was gifted with the ability to sense danger by Rhizophora and or Sunny. I never clarify which. This makes her it so when something life-threatening is about to happen, she knows 5 or 10 minutes before it happens. Then it's backstory. Smokey and her sister lived on the run for a while until they were found by the Mangrove Pack, and they were also really young when this happens, but, so, like, they're essentially on the verge of death when they're found. The Mangrove Pack treated Smokey and River like outcasts, and this sticks with Smokey for the rest of her life. The only people that do treat her like family are Oval and Hibiscus, and they die tragically in a fire in the prologue. Smokey and River run from that fire and end up in 2 different packs, and that is the extent of what I'm willing to share, because the rest is spoilers for the book that isn't even out yet, the books that aren't out yet, not for the first book. Now we look at Smokey's weaknesses. If I'd have to say anything, I think it might be her own closed-off nature. There are many times that characters try to help her and she refuses. In the whole second book, it would have never happened if she just opened up a little. Can't say much on that, but yeah, the second book wouldn't have happened if she was open and honest in the first one. Now we look at motivation. Smokey is motivated by finding something to fit in, but she also feels a little hopeless, like there's no point because she will never succeed. She often gets her agency taken away from her, so over the next few books in this world I'm publishing, she slowly regains interest in life and fitting in places. The next character is Flare. Flare's name was chosen because I liked it. That's it. In universe, it's because her family tree is fire-themed and names, and her eyes are fiery and orange. Also, her personality matches the name, so it worked out, but yeah, in all honesty, I picked it because I liked the name Flare and couldn't think of a Warrior Cats OC to use it for. As for personality, Flare is very optimistic, happy, cheerful. When she is younger, she's a little against authority and energetic, but she mellows out as she ages. She still remains a little energetic and rebellious, but never as hard as when she's a pup. She also has a strong sense of justice. If something is bullshit, she will point it out. As for appearances, she is black with a white chest heart and orange eyes. She's also a little adventurous. For character type, Flare is dynamic. She's a protagonist or deuteragonist. I've never had to say it out loud. Am I saying it right? Whatever. And she's also a round character. For Flare, her trait I never say is bravery. I want by the end of the book series that to be the trait that stands out for her, while I never have to say it directly, as she is nearly fearless beyond bats and... Actually, yeah, that's about it. Bats. Now for inspiration character. Again, she has no inspiration, but she also isn't quite a self-insert. Now, this is the confusing part, is she also is sort of a self-insert, but not of me now, but rather a snapshot of the way I externally presented myself when I was younger, in order to, like, feel normal and to, like, make people like me. I presented myself as brave, fearless, adventurous, and cool and fun. She's also a mix of Warrior Cats characters. I don't remember the specific ones that inspired her, but I do remember that she was inspired by it. This fact actually irritates me to no end. I never wrote stuff down when I started writing, and I hate that I can't look back on old drafts. Flare's powers consist of seeing the past on occasion. She can't control this power, and it often happens when she is asleep. In the first book, I believe it only happens once, or not at all. I don't remember if I removed that scene or not. And in the next book, she has a sister born named Spark that sees the future, and Smokey seeing ghosts plus her danger sense is supposed to be her seeing the present. I thought it was cool at the time of making the characters that one saw past, one saw future, and one saw present based on their personalities. Flare doesn't have much of a backstory beyond her twin sister. She's a pup at the start of the book, but in chapter 1 it is mentioned she had a sister named Scorch who was supposed to take the role of Alpha, while Flare wanted to become a hunter and marry someone in the Stone Peak Pack. That was her goal in life, and her sister was everything. Her sister died, as well as her friend Birch's brother died, and the two are left comforting each other in their grief. There is one scene where Flame accuses her of using Smokey as a replacement for Scorch because she is mad at him for replacing her dead mom. In the end, she is grateful that her life didn't go as planned, but she also feels guilt for that gratefulness because her sister died to get her where she was, and it is a subplot. What is Flare's motivation? That depends on what Flare is doing. Her motivation for adopting Smokey is because she feels no one should truly feel unloved or unwanted, and she makes it her mission to make Smokey feel accepted in her pack. There's also subconsciously replacing Scorch, but that isn't the main motivation. Genuinely, quotes from the text will say, she just wants Smokey to feel like she belongs. As for her motivation for being alpha, she's forced to, but if she's going to be alpha against her will, she is gonna do it well. She doesn't want to be, but she is, and she notices flaws in the system, so if she's forced to be here, she might as well fix some things while she's at it. For weaknesses, I'd say bats and a disrespect for rules. She has an intense fear of bats, which is a remnant of an old plot line, but is no longer being used, and I didn't have time to edit it out. And disrespecting rules, while it does her a lot of good, it also puts her in a lot of danger in some cases where rules are there for a reason, and she'll just disregard those and then get hurt. Then is Rebecca. Rebecca's name was chosen because of vibes. There was no thought gone into it other than I liked Rebecca as a villain name. On top of that, she's the only person with a human name. Flare, Smokey, Fang, Birch are all things that can be found in nature and wolves would know about. Rebecca shows she is different. Fun fact about her, she had a different name originally, but I never wrote it down. Summer break hit and everyone, including me, forgot the original name. It is lost to time and this pisses me off to no end. Rebecca is a black wolf with similar features to Smokey and blood red eyes, unless of course her eyes are green. She does not have heterochromia. In the pictures shown on screen, she is drawn with it, but she does not canonically have it. That is an artistic choice. She either has blood red eyes, and sometimes she has emerald green eyes. She tries to act malicious, but there's definitely more depth to her that I won't spoil. Her character type is the antagonist, and she's a round character as well as dynamic. Rebecca's trait is hard. At the beginning of writing, I would have said she's malicious, but she isn't anymore. Now, I'd say she's motherly or protective is a good trait to attach to her, even to people that aren't her children. She acts somewhat motherly over. If she claims them as hers, she will be protective over them. Rebecca's inspirations is definitely hard to pinpoint, but one of them would be Darth Vader, and another would be, leopard fur from Warrior Cats. That wasn't written down in the script, I just thought of it as I was filming. For powers, Rebecca can do a number of things. She can see ghosts, for one, and she can sometimes, when granted permission by her patron, make wolves pass out, and she can also morph into a ghost, which opens up a few more abilities. Ghosts can decide whether to be seen, even to other ghosts or people with ghost eyes, which is something Rebecca can do in ghost mode. And Rebecca can walk through walls. Along with the morphing into ghosts, she can separate her ghost body, leaving her a passed out wolf in place, or she can choose to just morph the entire body into a ghostly form that she can basically teleport with. And she has one more power, but it's a spoiler, so that's for me to know and for you to theorize about. Rebecca's backstory is a spoiler for book 3, and her motivations is a spoiler for book 1, so I'm going to skip straight into her weakness. Rebecca's weaknesses is those she cares about, and the fact that she sold her soul. No, I'm not going to elaborate on the sold soul. Next is Birch. Birch's name comes from the fact that the birch tree is my second favorite tree, with willow being my first favorite tree. Birch is a gray wolf and, quote from Flare's POV, dreamy green eyes. He's smart and nice and a good hunter. He's super religious compared to the others in the book, and he's very proud of the fact that he's his father's son. Birch is probably a round character and dynamic. He is a side character and a love interest for Flare on top of that. I want people to think that Birch is a gentleman when they read the book. I want people to think he actually cares about Flare for Flare and not because she's the alpha's daughter. Birch has no inspiration characters or powers as he isn't a descendant of any of the ancient wolves, and I didn't have an inspiration for him. Birch's backstory is a lot like Flair's. He had a little brother named Dash that he adored, and the two were best friends, and then Dash got sick with Scorch and died. But unlike Flair, Birch grew up listening to stories about the ancient wolves and idolizing them. He wanted nothing more than to be a seer, but unfortunately he does not have the eye. He does not have that gift, and he is unable to communicate with the gods beyond what every wolf can. His father had an encounter with the gods, and because of that, Birch wants to be like his father. His father isn't a seer, by the way. He has the ability to be one, but he just chose to be the path of the hunter. Birch's motivation depends on what he's doing. Why does he love Flair? Because she's been his best friend since childhood, and she is everything he's ever loved. Why does he help the pack? Because that's what you do. Why does he save Smokey with Flair in Chapter 1? Because Flair told him to. Now Badger. Badger's name comes from the fact that I googled strong animals, and it was the only result that felt realistic for a wolf to know about, and didn't sound stupid. Badger is static in the first book, but dynamic in the others. He's a side character, and he is a love interest to Smokey because when I originally wrote the book, I had myself absolutely convinced that every character needs a lover, especially main characters. I've grown as a person now. In future books, you can expect characters without love interests. He's also a round character. Badger, like Flair, is brave, strong, and confident, and these are descriptors I want the readers to take away from his character. Badger's backstory is that he has two siblings, Soot and Twig, who are best friends, and he is left out. Soot and Twig are friends, Birch and Flair are friends, and he's everyone's friends, but no one's someone. And that's why he latches onto Smokey so quickly. His parents are very non-existent in the book, not because they're bad, but because Smokey and Flair never interact with them enough with that family for the parents to be known. I try to imply in the books that there are more wolves in the world and in the packs than the ones that are shown on screen, and we're just shown the ones that Flair and Smokey specifically interact with on a daily. We know his parents' names, but there's nothing else about them. He also had the disease as well as Scorch and Dash, however, he healed from it where they didn't. Flair and Birch hold no hard feelings for this. He does hold survivor's guilt because of this. Birch's motivation for what happens in the climax with Smokey is a mix of my alpha told me to and I love her. Primarily the second one. He loves Smokey and nothing will stop that. Badger's weakness is that he's strong, so he thinks he can do anything. He thinks he can fix any issue protecting the pack. Nothing will prevent him from protecting his pack because he's strong, so he has to. Even if that means possibly getting murdered. Oh, and he's kind of a simp. Next, let's talk about Asher. The name Asher comes from her character design. Asher is a gray wolf with distinctive black markings. She was inspired by a one-sentence description in the first Warrior Cats book talking about a mother in the ThunderClan pack. This mother doesn't exist in the rest of Warrior Cats. She didn't die, she was simply overlooked by the creators of Warrior Cats. There were many cats like this where Firepaw describes them in the first book, but they never come back later. They don't die, they simply cease to exist. And this angered me a little, and I vowed to do justice by this cat specifically. And distinctive black markings made me think Ash. And for some reason, I thought Ash wasn't a good enough name for her, so I added the ER. I made her name Asher. So I don't think I need to re-describe her, but her eyes are also blue, specifically the blue seen in this picture. Asher is a side character, flat in the first book, but round overall. Dynamic, side character, and an antagonist. Asher's trait is jealousy. She is jealous of Smokey and River, and I'm not going to elaborate. As for motivations, Asher does evil because she has to. She doesn't want to, but she can't not. Asher helps her pack because it gives her purpose, She hates Smokey because she is jealous. Asher's primary weakness is that without Rebecca, she's a little aimless. She can still lead the pack, but Asher doesn't know what to do with herself as a person without Rebecca. She is a little codependent on Rebecca. Fang's name comes from an OC named Bloodfang. My friend made her, and the two of us messed around with this character lot in the same year that the Moondust story came to be how it is. We ended actually making a variant of Bloodfang in our OC clan named Dust Clan we posted silly videos about on another channel. Well, when I went home one night, I was working on the Shadowclaw pack, how it worked, why it worked, the origins of the characters, and I decided Rebecca and Asher needed a third guy in the friend group, because if not, then they would be the automatic ship. And rather than Rebecca and her mate from her backstory and Asher and her mate in the current books. Now, I fully well know that Asher x Rebecca is going to be a ship, but now with Fang, there's a variety. You can ship Fang and Asher, Rebecca and Fang. You can ship all three of them with their actual canonical husbands, whatever you want. And when I had the name for her, I knew I wanted her to be ever so slightly evil. Unlike Rebecca and Asher, I didn't want her to have a redemption arc. So I took half of Bloodfang's name, because she was also a cruel character. Fang is a white wolf with gray eyes and blood splotches on her fur. Red is not a natural color on wolves. These splotches have meaning that's relevant to future novels, but for now, I leave it to you to make fan theories on. Fang is static, an antagonist, and a side character. I don't know if she constitutes as round or flat though, so you tell me. Fang is a wolf originally from the Moondust pack with a different name originally. She trained to become a hunter, and she had a mate in the Stone Peak pack. That mate, however, cheated on her, and she kinda went evil and killed said mate, joining the Shadowclaw pack. She changed her name to Fang and became the muscle of the Shadowclaw pack. Something that that is somewhat also a part of her backstory is that she got a new mate named Viper, who is in the current present of the Shadowclaw pack. Neither of them really like or care about each other. It was more of a political agreement. Viper wanted more sway with Rebecca, but didn't have much power, and Fang did. And Fang wanted more sway with the less powerful wolves in the pack, and while she could technically brute force it, she didn't want to. And she married Viper. Viper, in fact, had a crush on another wolf. The entire time, Fang refuses to love anyone after what happened with her first mate, and there's more to that, but again, spoilers. Fang is motivated by pure, unfiltered hate. There isn't a specific weakness she has, but she can be killed. Like, she isn't immortal or anything. Next, I'm gonna get to talking about the relationships between the characters. First, I'll give a list of all the named characters and their appearance and general personality. There are more characters, but yeah. And then I'll shift to a family tree / relationship chart so you know how each character relates to each other. In the Shadowclaw pack, we have Rebecca, with a sleek black coat and blood red eyes. Rebecca's right-hand man, Asher, is a gray wolf with distinctive black markings. River is a brown wolf with blue eyes and brown striped fur, female. Fang is a white female wolf with splotches of red that cover her coat. Fern is a female with a rich brown coat and green eyes. Thorn is a male with a gray coat and sharp silver-tipped fur. Like, it's gray and then silver. Viper is a male with slender black fur. Moss is a female another white wolf, and at the beginning of the book, she's pregnant. You might notice that there are a lot of pregnant couples in this book. That is not because I think a woman needs children to be complete. I think women can live perfectly happy lives single. I am Aroace myself. This is because A, the main theme of the book is motherhood. As a woman, I'm exploring the idea of being a mother, and writing about that is how I explore that without actually being a mother. And B, because I needed their pups to exist in later books, and if I didn't start now, their children wouldn't exist when I needed them. I want to clarify, I try to give all the motherly characters a personality outside of their family and partner. Moss, however, I did miss the mark on, so I'm sorry if Moss makes you uncomfortable. I tried to, in later drafts, give her more personality outside of her pups, but there isn't enough screen time with her, really, to do that, and in future books, I also try to give her a personality outside of her pups, but it is kind of hard for her. Like, I didn't intend for her to exist, really. I just needed her child to exist. So I am sorry for any discomfort that comes from her. It is valid to be uncomfortable by her. I have grown as a person since making her, and I don't make characters like her anymore, where their sole purpose is mother. Hawk is a dark brown with streaks of lighter brown and sharp eyes. Willow is a female, graceful, with a silver coat. You might notice she shares a name with me. Well, before I decided Willow would be my pen name, I used it for just about everything because I think it's a very pretty name. She isn't a self-insert. Aspen is a young wolf with a light brown coat. Cherry is a wolf that looks similar to Smokey, except she has more light in her eyes. And that's all the named wolves in the Shadowclaw pack. Now for the Moondust pack. Flame is a black wolf with white paws and orange eyes. Flare is a black wolf with a white chest heart and orange eyes. Sandy is a cream wolf with dull green eyes. Mist is a gray wolf with a white underbelly and blue eyes. Twig is a brown wolf with blue eyes. Soot is a dark gray wolf with blue eyes and white paws. Canonically has insomnia. Badger is a black male with ice blue eyes, thick white fur, and a white stripe. Cinder is a gray wolf with blue eyes. Coral is a white female wolf. Stone is a male gray wolf with green eyes. Luna is a white wolf with gray splotches and blue eyes. Rock is a brown wolf, and Dash looks like Birch but smaller and slight variations. I leave it up to the fan artists to collectively decide what those variations are. I beg you, please give me fan art. Dusk is a gray wolf with green eyes, mother of Badger and Soot and Twig. Alder is a male with reddish, rusty brown fur and blue eyes and a mate to Dusk. Lark is a gray and brown wolf with bright blue eyes and female. Falcon is a gray wolf with brown eyes, male. Juniper is a silver wolf with gray eyes, male. Iris is a reddish-brown wolf with brown eyes, female. Hazel is a brown wolf with hazel eyes, female. Cedar is a white female wolf with gray eyes that almost seem omniscient, like she can see through your soul. And that is all the named Moondust pack characters. There are very few named wolves in the Stone Peak pack, but there are more wolves in the Stone Peak pack than the ones I named. Here are all the named wolves of the Stone Peak pack. Pebble is a small gray wolf that is in love with Rebecca, male. Honey Trot is a cream-colored wolf with yellow eyes, male. Dahlia is a white-furred wolf with rosy eyes, and she is the beta, and she is in love with Pebble. Flora is a brown wolf. She is super loyal and female. Onyx has an inconsistent character design because I wanted to see if anyone would notice. Ganymede is a cheerful brown apprentice. Winter has white fur and is female, and Snow has white fur and is female, and I never figured out the distinction between the two of those. So again, I leave it up to the fan artists. I beg you, be my fan artist. Scout, no clue what he looks like. He was made by a friend. Never clarified it, and I never actually, described him in the book, I don't think. When I looked through to make the script, I never found a description, but I might be wrong. Leave it in the comments, I don't know. Finally, there are the wolves that aren't a part of any pack, but are in the story. Star is translucent, with blackish blue and white speckled stars throughout her fur, and she has white glowing eyes and a yellow glowing star on her chest, and she is female in the ancient wolf of protection. Sun is a yellow with yellow glowing eyes and an orange sun glowing on her chest, and she is the ancient wolf of motherhood, and she is female. Cloud's fur looks like the clouds at sunset, however, this can change. Her fur is based off of her emotions, and it's constantly moving. The pinkish sunset-like clouds, they're moving, and she has the scent of rain on her fur, and a pink chest heart, and pink glowing eyes, and she is female. Wind is pure white with glowing green eyes and a green leaf glowing on his chest, and he is male, and he is the ancient wolf of knowledge. No, not knowledge, intelligence. There's a difference in my head. Also, I forgot to mention, but Cloud is the ancient wolf of love. Moon is a gray wolf, a sparkling gray wolf, with glowing blue eyes and a crescent moon glowing on his chest, and he is male, and he is the ancient wolf of leadership. Spirit is a chaotic, cheerful, blue ghost cat that seems a little ditzy, but she's actually really smart, and she is female. Oval is a cream wolf with honey eyes, and she is female. Hibiscus, the only description I can find in any of my notes, says red fur, but beyond that, I don't know. Dread Moon is a large three-headed black wolf, about the size of a horse, with huge muscles beneath her fur, and cold, emotionless eyes, and the head on the left has blue eyes, and the head on the right has brown eyes. The head on the right has brown eyes, and the head in the middle has one blue and one brown. And then Mango is yellow with green eyes and a black pattern on his tail similar to Pikachu. Now for the relationships between everyone. I saw these charts on Pinterest where they have a central character and you draw arrows and add a key and to show how the characters relate to each other, and I think I'm gonna do something like that for my main characters and then make a family tree. It's a bit chaotic, so I'll go around it quickly, starting at Ganymede. Smokey feels neutral about Ganymede. Both are friendly, same with Onyx. Both Sandy and Smokey feel familial connections. Flare feels familial with Smokey, but Smokey only feels friendly for Flare. River is Smokey's sister, so they both feel familial. Oval was Smokey's adoptive mother, so they feel familial. Smokey is friendly with Sunny, meanwhile Sunny feels familial and like a mentor to Smokey. Smokey fears Star, meanwhile Star feels familial. Smokey dislikes Spirit, but she is friendly with Spirit. Smokey hates Rebecca, Fang, and Asher, but she only fears Fang and Asher and not Rebecca. Smokey feels neutral about Birch, but both are generally friendly with each other. Smokey considers Lark to be a mentor figure to her. Smokey and Flame both feel neutral about each other. Smokey and Badger are both friendly with each other and have romantic feelings. Smokey considers both Cinder and Cedar to be mentor figures, and she's friendly with both. And finally, she sees Soot as a friend. Now for Flair's relationship chart. Flair's friendly with Ganymede, same with Onyx, however she feels neutral about Ganymede. She feels familial with her mother as well as Smokey. She's friendly and neutral with River. She dislikes Asher. Mist feels a mentoral connection with Flair and familial, but Flair does not return those feelings, and she hates and dislikes Mist. Flair has a little fear of the Ancient Wolves, and the Ancient Wolves feel nothing but mentor obligation to her. She fears Rebecca. Fang hates her. She is friendly and in love with Birch. She is friendly with Lark, feels neutral, and has a mentor-apprentice relationship with her. Flair has a familial relationship with Flame. She is friendly with Birch, but ultimately friendly with Badger, but ultimately feels neutral about him. She is friendly with Birch's little siblings, familial and mentor figures to them. Soot feels neutral about her, and the two are friendly. I don't have time to draw a family tree for every character I'm going to talk about in this next segment, so I really hope you're taking notes, or this is going to suck, because I'm doing rapid fire. I will also be skipping talking about certain relationships, because they are plot points and relevant, so I just won't talk about them. Let's start with the Ancient Wolves. In the way of relationships, Moon and Sun are married, Cloud and Wind are married, Star had a mortal mate named Birch, and two sisters, Ritzophora and Dreadmoon. Dreadmoon has a mate named Mango, Sun has a brother named Eros, and the others have siblings, but they are unknown. Moon and Sun have an amount of children and an amount of generations that lead to Flame and his sister, who are never seen in this book. Flame gets married to Sandy and has Flare and Scorch as pups. Meanwhile, he adopts Smokey, but has no blood that goes into that. Cloud and Wind have an amount of children and generations that lead to the birth of Winter and Snow. Winter is mates with a wolf, and then has Onyx as a child. Star and Branch have an amount of children that lead to a mystery alpha described in Chapter 2 and Chapter 4, and then an amount of generations after that. They have River and Smokey. Ritzophora has no known mate or children, however, the book isn't focused on her, and it's canonical that she has descendants, so she had to have had a mate and children. Eros has no canon children, descendants, or mate. Dreadmoon and Mango have an amount of children and an amount of generations that lead to a wolf that mates with a wolf named Winter. Now, this next part of the family trees isn't trees, but more of information about genetic relationships and mate pairs. Badger, Soot, and Twig are all siblings, with Alder and Dusk as their parents. Ganymede and Scout are siblings. Asher has a mate named Thorn. Moss's mate is dead. Fang has a mate named Viper. Hawk and Willow are mates. Coral and Stone are mates. Birch is their son. They also have a second litter at some point in the first book. Honey and Lark are mates. Video me forgot to say, but editor me remembers, is that Aspen and Cherry are also siblings. Sorry for the disorganization of the family tree. I had to rush this section because I was running on a time crunch when it came to writing this script. Now for rejected plotlines. Moondust was the first book I ever wrote with the intent of publishing it, which meant I had to make one canonical timeline, which is difficult transition for someone who prior to that had OCs, where I could just put them in any situation I wanted to. So, for the first year, there was a lot of changing in the books because I couldn't just do whatever with no continuity. I'm talking changes like Smokey was originally a side character and this was a romance book kind of changes. Now, I have many rejected plot lines and I wish so deeply I could talk about all of them, but one, I procrastinated writing this script till the very last minute, and two, I think that honestly could be like an hour-long video on its own. So I only have time for my 3 favorite rejected plot lines. The subtitle of this section is slightly misleading, depending on the variant of the rejected plotline. But the idea that Smokey became evil was always interesting to me because it was believable in every draft of her existence that at some point she would snap and become evil. The first version of evil Smokey happens to abuse Rebecca's ghost morph ability and Smokey's ghost eye abilities. It takes place in the setting where Smokey and Flair are full-grown adults, but they are young, like 21-ish in wolf years. In the published book, Flair and Smokey are pups and apprentices for the majority of book 1, but in this idea, Smokey has already been in the pack for most of her childhood and the beginning of her adulthood. Not only is she established in the pack, but she's felt excluded her whole life. So one day she is approached by Rebecca, who asks her to spy. Smokey says no. Rebecca scares her. It was always iffy on how Rebecca would scare her. I had written 500 different scenes for that. Whether through physical pain or not, though, Rebecca eventually convinces Smokey to start spying, and at this point in time, Rebecca had no pack. Then I gave Rebecca a pack. Then I gave that pack a culture and a history. Then I gave Rebecca character development beyond a flat character. Then I gave Smokey character development. And suddenly Smokey wasn't a coward willing to spy, so I had to scrap the plotline, but it leads into what the published book is. Another plotline for evil Smokey is Smokey gets upset about her trauma and decides to join Rebecca on the dark side of the Force. Can't say much on this without spoiling the actual book, but I'll talk about it later once everyone has read the book and or I decide to, or someone asks. Who knows? Next is Evergreen. Evergreen was a removed character rather than a plotline, but I still regret it. I was able to give her name away to another author friend, and because there was no way I could really use her again in any of the other types of books I write, but it was still disappointing that I couldn't use her. She was the daughter of Cedar with no known father. She was an apprentice about the same age as Flair, and she could read people's minds and feelings. This was also an ability Cedar had at the time in this draft of the book. Everyone had powers, not just the descendants of the gods in this timeline. It got hard really quickly, however, because I had to find a unique power to give to each individual wolf. Evergreen, like her mother, was wise and kind, but she also had a young, adventurous spark to her. She was willing to break rules in the pack and sneak out with Flair and everyone else to single-handedly attack the Shadowclaw pack. She only lasted a week before she was removed from the book because she was far too overpowered and there was no way to have her in the book without it becoming an issue. And the difference between her and Cedar now, because Cedar now still can kind of tell everyone's emotions and what they're thinking, is because Cedar is a older, wiser wolf, and I'm able to use that as a plot device, where if a child, Evergreen, could do it and was with the protagonist 24/7, it would get really hard to explain why certain things are happening and certain things aren't happening. But she was created in an off day of PE where we weren't doing any physical work, but rather sitting in an empty classroom and doing some BS assignment that I didn't turn in, and I was sitting right next to my best friend in the class, and I was, like, talking and made the character, but for anyone who wants to make fan art of her mind-reading power included green glowing eyes and green swirls around her, and she was a white wolf with longish fur. Now, this isn't a completely removed plotline. I still want to do this with my friends, but it's definitely changed a bit. So, I have friends, and they sometimes write books, but the thing about them is that they don't write books nearly as frequently and religiously as I do. There is nothing wrong with that, but a while ago, me and my friends were going to make a crossover book where all our characters got stuck into the in-between, which is a kind of broken world dimension, and it's like, the plants are like like a tree would be 5 different types of trees mashed into one because it's a glitching and broken world, and the water like flows the wrong direction and stuff, and the animals don't quite look right. They claimed, and I put vital plot points into the in-between that would affect the ending of my book. Because for a while, they claimed they'd finish their books at the same time as me, and we'd be able to write it together. But one by one, people dropped out, starting with Sabrine, then Finley, then Vix, and finally, Ren never dropped out. They still want to write the in-between with me, but last I checked, they still want to write it, but they aren't done with their first book and have a series of 5 they have to write before I finished 3, and I don't want to rush them. Writing is meant to be fun. So the crossover has been removed from my main series and put as a side project that I hopefully will be able to do with my friends, and I have to actually rewrite the end of my story ever since then, and it is no longer what I originally planned, and I've been working on rewriting it for a while. Now, I already mentioned the Warrior Cats inspiration, which is the main one, but there are a few more things that inspired it, and the Warrior Cats inspiration is kind of boring. I feel like anyone could put together what the inspirations are, but another thing that inspired it was Star Wars, specifically Star Wars Rebels, Lego Star Wars Freemakers, and the original trilogy, which I won't touch on because of spoilers. I'm not touching on how the original trilogy affected it. And then there are songs and things here and there that had different impacts and inspirations. In Star Wars Rebels, in the final season, Ezra communicates a lot with this pack of wolves. These wolves had mystical, magical abilities, and this was why I made the book with wolves instead of cats, and they were mystical, and I based the ancient wolves around the concept of these wolves in Star Wars Rebels. Furthermore, from episode 1 of Rebels has had this found family theme, and it's been about found family, and I liked that a lot. It was intriguing to me, specifically Ezra, who is new to the dynamic, new to the story. It takes a good season before he feels truly a part of the Rebels family, and exploring how different characters accept him at different rates. And Ezra has an arc where he tries to find his parents and his family, and he learns that they're gone, and I loved that arc, and I thought it'd be much more interesting if he found his parents, but they weren't who he thought they were, and I thought I could make a cool plotline around the idea of that. And Sabine's storyline, where she did something wrong and regretted it, it was beautiful, and it inspired how I'm currently treating the books. And these all impacted my writings in conscious and subconscious ways, even in stories that aren't Moondusts. I credit Rebels as the hugest impact on my work. In the early days of Moondust, I literally watched it on repeat non-stop. It's a good show and the foundation of my childhood. Another piece of Star Wars media that heavily influenced my writing is Lego Star Wars Freemakers. There is this one scene where Rowan is fighting MOC, and he gives he gives this speech that is not particularly special compared to the thousands of speeches given by heroes in media, but this one, impacted me.
I have programming directives I must fulfill, namely, your demise.
Okay, MOC. Let's do this. Again.
Again.
Or... let's not.
You have lowered your defenses. Why?
Because I'm getting tired of this. Aren't you?
Droids do not tire.
Right, but we both know how this goes, MOC. We'll fight one more time and you won't beat me and I won't beat you.
Admittedly, this has been a pattern.
But you'll keep coming back so we can fight again and again and again. It's like we're caught in a loop. It just seems kinda pointless. Does that make any sense to you, MOC? Were you programmed to be pointless?
No, I could not be, because that would be pointless.
See where I'm going here?
Could there be a flaw in my programming?
Pretty much, yeah.
Something about it rooted itself into my soul, specifically how I wrote Flair and Rebecca's relationship. Their relationship isn't a copy and paste of how Rowan and MOC interact. In early drafts, it was definitely closer, but it's evolved from that. But it is still rooted in this idea of Flair trying to get through to Rebecca, and one day Rebecca finally listening, and Flair thinking they are trapped in a loop of pointless fighting, and as more characters and dynamics were added into this, it's grown into its own unique thing, but it all started because of a single LEGO Star Wars series. Also, Clone Wars impacted my writings in many ways. Ahsoka was my favorite character, and I had a 4-year obsession with her. She didn't inspire any character, but she is the reason I watched Rebels in the first place, to see the episodes she was in. And in her episode, there is this one land called the World Between Worlds, and it inspired the In-Between that was ultimately cut and or removed, but it was still there. As for song inspirations, the biggest one I can think of is, and I specifically remember, is I See a Dreamer. It's a song by CG5 about Dream SMP. I never watched it, but certain lines translated into how I wrote certain characters and how I viewed the characters, and I'd listen to this song when writing certain scenes. Okay, let's talk about how it evolved over time. So, as I mentioned before, I was going to write a book taking place in the colonial times. I wish I could talk about a moment when it suddenly became a wolf book, but honestly, it didn't. They were and are separate ideas. It was more of the colonial book was meant to be a team project between me and Finley, but once Finley dropped out, I didn't really have any motivation or care to write this book was like this idea that was fundamentally a team idea without the team. But I still had motivation to participate in this bet that Sabrine had proposed. I didn't want to just let Sabrine and Ren win, so I came up with Moondust. I do enjoy pretending that the colony book was an early draft of Moondust, but honestly, it isn't. So I went to Sabrine and pitched Moondust as the book for the bet, and she said, yeah, sure. But Moondust still evolved from what it was then to what it is now. So what was Moondust? Moondust was a romance between Flair and Birch, or it was an adventure where Flair invents feminism, or it was a bloody war with Flair as the noble leader. Honestly, it was a lot. For a while it was just my sandbox, but the first semblance of a cohesive plot was about Flair and Birch being in love with each other, and there was nothing wrong with this plot, but it was projection. I didn't feel any romantic connections, but I was told teen girls needed to do that or they weren't real teens, so I wrote romance. But then I learned about the asexual and aromantic spectrum. After finding that out, I didn't feel a need to project onto my books, and the romance dropped into being a subplot. Then it was a story about Rebecca starting a war single-handedly with no pack. Then it was a story about Flair being pissed off about her dad remarrying after her mom died, but that wasn't enough meat to be the soul of the book. Then Smokey got to have a perspective, and for a while it was the Smokey show as I experimented with Smokey's dynamics with Flair and Flame and Rebecca. After that, I got to learn more about Rebecca, and that allowed me to create her pack and her culture. From there, I started working on the third pack, so it wasn't just 2 packs at war, and there could be a buffer. And then I wrote Draft Uno, which was a mix of all of those, but in like a Frankenstein sense. And then I got to chapter 10, and I was upset with everything. It wasn't good. I kept deleting chapters and then rewriting them, and it didn't have all the elements I wanted it to have. Like, there were characters that were minorly inconsistent, and I wanted Onyx to be a core part of the book, but she wasn't there because when I started writing Draft Uno, she didn't even exist yet, and there was so much I wanted the book to be, and it just wasn't. So I started from scratch and actually wrote an outline this time. Finishing the outline was probably the greatest moment in the project, because at that moment it clicked in my head that this wasn't just something I was doing to fill time. This was like actually gonna be published. Before then, there was always some semblance of doubt in the back of my mind that I could just drop out at any time. But finishing the outline, I just stared at the wall as it dawned on me I was gonna be an author. This moment was bigger for me than finishing any draft or publishing the book itself. And it was everything I needed it to be. The outline had romance, it had an interesting dynamic between Rebecca and Smokey, it had Onyx, and I got to include information about all 3 packs, and then came editing. Between the official draft 1 and the published version, the book is mostly the same. The only big difference that being that I removed the original prologue concept because I hated it so much I was telling beta readers to skip it, and then added something new that gave depth to Smokey and River and their relationship. I rewrote chapter 13. It is the same thing still, I just rewrote it because some parts were clunky and the pacing was weird, and half of it is the original chapter copy and pasted. I also added some filler chapters to the book because I realized it was too heavy and it didn't allow any time to breathe. And at the halfway point, I thought people needed a good moment to breathe. And I didn't want too much heavy moments. And I also added a character named Mango because I had the idea for him and I thought he would be generally cool and add dynamics to future books. I plan to do more with this character later, but for now I just had to add him to plant the seed that he exists. Then of course there were minor scene changes here and there and normal editing. Something I want to talk about here before we move on is that the book is still growing and fluid. I have a general idea of how I want the book series to end, but ultimately people can still impact the story, and you can impact the story. Because I am an indie author and I can change anything without a second glance. There is no traditional publishing holding me back. And if I see a fan theory and I think, oh dang, they ended my story better than I did, I might take inspiration. The only thing that is set in stone is the first book. So please make fan theories. The main thematic question in Moondust is what makes a family family? I explore the idea of found family. The phrase, the blood of the covenant runs thicker than the water of the womb, inspired a lot. In Flair's mind, family means blood and Smokey is the only exception. But in Smokey's mind, it's the people you choose are family and River is the only exception. Exploring these 2 points allows the reader to come to their own conclusions on family and invites people with both perspectives to consider the opposite perspective. And at least that's my goal. I primarily focus on motherhood and sisterhood because I am a woman who has sisters and a mother and the choice to become a mother when I'm older. And I explore these ideas now when writing, and that reflects with Smokey and Flair. Flair wants to be a mom in the first book, and Smokey expresses no interest, positive or negative. By the end of the series, both come to two separate conclusions on what a mother should be and whether or not they want to have kids. I have a different conclusion that's somewhat in between them, but honestly, it's up to each woman, and I don't think there is a right answer on how to approach motherhood. And seeing as they're adoptive sisters, both with blood sisters, they are also developing interesting views on sisterhood and what they feel about having and being sisters. Smokey has a mental hierarchy on her sisters and which ones are more important. Where for Flair, they are all equal, and while Flair doesn't consider River a sister, she does hold her a little higher than non-family wolves because she is Smokey's sister and she matters to Smokey, which shows how Flair thinks even somehow they are vaguely related, even if she treats River more like a cousin than she does a sister. A less explored theme in this series, but still there, is leadership. Flair in the first book believes Flame is doing leadership wrong because he does not have a personal relationship with every wolf in the pack. He barely knows what it's like to be a pup and an apprentice, and she feels a lot of wolves go unheard. In the first book, she is too caught up with the plot and to change anything, but in later books, I plan to explore how she changes things. She also is an apprentice most of the book, and she is ignored when it comes to making decisions, or when she's allowed to put input, it is only half used, and then Flame takes all the credit, or Flair is kind of like ignored when it comes to like inter-clan relation cross-clan relationships. Like when talking to the Stone Peak Pack, there is a scene where she comes there on behalf of Moondust as an alpha, and the alpha of the Stone Peak Pack looks directly past her at the mediator, who is not the alpha and didn't come as representation, and talks to her about clan relationships, and it infuriates Flair. Flair plans to do things differently when she eventually gets an apprentice of her own, and I can't wait to explore that kind of dynamic. Another thing that comes up is grief, and while it isn't the primary theme of the book, it does impact how the characters process things and how they interact with the world. Smokey processes grief inwardly for a long time until a few months later, where it hits her at full force at 3 a.m., like me. River cries in the moment, but is able to function normally after that. Flair cries in the moment and stays in that grief for a while, but ultimately draws strength from it. And this impacts their different stories and how they move through the world. Moondust has affected my life in many ways. Obviously, it gave me a hobby, but it also gave me experiences and confidence and helped me become closer friends with some of my friends, and it's an icebreaker to talk about, and believe it or not, if not for Moondust, I wouldn't have started this YouTube channel about poetry. There are 1,000 ways Moondust has affected my life, and I'm still not sure of all of them. The biggest thing Moondust did was become a hobby. Not just a hobby, but a community. When I started writing, I found so many channels and online forums of people who wrote and gave writing advice, and it's really nice to have many people who want to share this with me. I feel, unlike a lot of other communities I've been a part of, there are far less toxic people in the teen indie author community. They still exist, but there are far less people telling me to kill myself here than in other fandoms. Experiences I've gained from this aren't exactly unique, but I still want to talk about them. Writing is an experience that no amount of writing a quick essay in school will ever explain, and no amount of talking to you can quite explain. But it's definitely changed my perspective on how I consume and interact with media, and it gave me a newfound respect for other people who write. It's also changed how I interact with other people, because while I don't think I was particularly apathetic before, I do think I carry a lot more empathy once I've written a story where I've essentially become someone else for 350 pages. Even if they started as self-inserts, they aren't 100% copy-pastes of me, and even writing the characters around them, despite not being in their POVs, when writing dialogue, you have to take into account their experiences, their personalities. How would two separate characters phrase the same thing? And I end up having to use a lot of empathy to think, how is this person Flair talking to going to tell Flair about this thing? And without Moondust, I think I wouldn't have branched off into other writings where I write about characters who aren't self-inserts, and overall, I think I've grown more understanding. And editing is a hardship that a 1-week unit in school will never capture. The pain of editing is so hard. I can't stress this enough. It is difficult to edit a book. If you've only had a high school education and you aren't writing frequently, I can't stress enough how hard it is to edit a book. Not only are you looking for grammar errors, you're looking for plot holes, you're realizing, wait, Smokey would never say that, and rephrasing. You're reworking sentences to be more coherent and cohesive. I could go on for hours. It is a hardship, and I think it has made me a stronger writer academically and a better speaker, and it's an experience I've definitely gained a lot from. A thing I personally struggle with is allowing myself to write deep and emotional stuff. I'm a teenager, so when I write a scene that has 5 deeper meanings and explores something I feel is wrong with society, talking about it feels off. Because there is symbolism in Moondust, and it is a wacky book about wolves that talk. And I am a high schooler. I feel sometimes I'm not allowed to write poetic, deep, thoughtful works, especially if those thoughtful works are about 2 wolves that like each other and want to be friends. Overall, I've gotten better at allowing myself to write deeper meanings and symbolisms that aren't any less valid than an adult writer who's published 1,000 times. I don't see this ever talked about, and I'm not sure if this is a me-specific thing, or if the embarrassment of having deeper meanings is a universal thing. I talk about my books a lot with my friends, and it is definitely weird to talk to them like, hey, person who I've said stupid thing in front of 1,000 times, my book is really deep and cool, and it has deeper meanings, and you should analyze it and go into the deeper meanings about it. Like, that feels weird. The final experience I want to talk about is the actual publishing process. So I really wanted to succeed with this book, so I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of videos, I bought a book, I listened to a lot of podcasts, I went to a self-publishing workshop, and none of that prepared me for how stressful the actual moment of publishing is. I had a panic attack right after, but ultimately it was underwhelming. I spent years on this project, and all publishing was submitting a book, and the family had virtually no reaction to this other than, I'm proud of you, said at the same level of anything else. And it was jarring that this was something that was supposed to be exciting, and it simply wasn't, and I had spent years on this, and there was nothing. It was just words, and that was off-putting. But the most important thing that Moondust has done for me is it helped me process my life. I'm going to keep this short, but when I started writing Moondust, I never faced grief. I was writing about grief, but I had never lived it. And then someone I knew died, and then another someone I knew died, and then someone else I didn't know but was like related to me died. When reading Moondust for a draft, I changed a few things as a way to cope with the grief I was facing. This gave me a sense of comfort. Moondust gave me a sense of comfort I wouldn't have had. And trust me, that did a lot. Not only did I know people dying, but other people I knew people dying, and pets that were dying. And I remember at one point sitting on the ground of band camp and thinking, why is everything around me dying? My friends are gonna die and I'm not gonna able to handle it. And writing scenes where characters in Moondust experienced grief and death helped me get over that fear. Now for a few things that are miscellaneous, that had nowhere else to go. This was originally going to be a lot bigger, as was the entire video, but I did realize most people probably didn't care, or if they did, there were things that could just have been their own videos, and if you are interested in that stuff, please let me know in the comments. Something interesting about Moondust is that it has a lot of references to other medias. I don't think I'd be able to list them all, but I can list a few. Number 1 is a media that doesn't even exist yet. I don't think this even counts as a reference so much as a crossover, but the character Spirit isn't mine. Not in the same sense Onyx isn't mine, where she is a character someone else made for me. Spirit isn't mine in the sense of my friend is writing a book called Spirits the Wisps, and I just took the main character from that book, turned her into a ghost, and added her in my book. And they didn't protest, so I guess it's mine now. If their book ever gets published, I will come back here and link it in the description, as well as making a video telling you to buy it. Now that I have the biggest one out of the way, let's get into the smaller references. My favorite one is the chapter title of chapter 10 is called Gone by Morning, as a reference to Elio May's song. Not only has Smokey's disappeared, but I think the song also matches her as a character. Then I also have Spirit saying darling, like darling, because Hermes from Epic says darling, and I have many people call Smokey Little Wolf, and I know there are Hamilton references in the book. I think the introductory to Aspen has one. I don't remember where all of them are, though, because there are probably a lot. I mentioned Sabrine's role in this before, but I didn't get to fully cover it, and I think there are 2 friends that get the biggest thanks ever. Not only was Sabrine the one that engaged the bet, but despite the fact that she knows literally nothing about the story, she influenced it the most. I don't even know how she did this. She's the reason Smokey's name is spelt the way it is. She's the reason Smokey can see ghosts. She influenced Flair's personality in early drafts. She made my front cover. She helped me edit a few chapters. And she's overall just the most supportive person I've ever seen, on top of Finley, who is also very supportive and just will listen to me yap about this book for hours, and has been quoted saying, "I'm so happy, I can't wait to have this book on my bookshelf, man." The story wouldn't exist without Sabrine, though, which is why I'm giving Sabrine a special thanks. And of course, the only other friend that I can give that big of a thanks to would be Ren. They did the most editing for me. They read through it and let me borrow their character, and they also helped me figure out the story when it was new, and they spent a lot of time with me working on it when no one else bothered to spend that time with me. All in all, 10 out of 10 friend, both of them. I love my friends. They're amazing. My other friends are cool too. I love them. Yeah. In a video before Behold the Fool, I talked about how I fear I am outgrowing Moondust, and that fear is still very present. The book isn't as interesting or appealing to me to write as other books I've started. I still want to finish the series because I've put so much effort into it, but it's been killing my drive. I've found more mature themes and more in-depth stories that are more interesting to me. Not that this is immature, but it definitely is silly, and it isn't the type of book I want to be remembered for. If I die, I wouldn't want this to be the book people like me for and talk about me for. I imagine this is a common thing for artists, especially really young ones, because from the ages of birth to 25, your brain is changing very fast. and it's something that I liked a few years ago, but now it seems out of touch to my interests. There are still aspects of the book I like exploring and writing, but it's still the overall concept. I find it childlike, and this will hopefully have no effect on the books being written and published, but I think that is something that needed to be noted. Like, I'm outgrowing this book, and I still plan with all my heart, and I fully intend to publish the remaining 3 books in the series, but it's gonna be hard. So now that all that's done, I have a few tidbits of housekeeping to do. What does this mean for the channel? What future book projects are there? And begging for So then, for the next few weeks or over the next month, this will mean a lot of videos about the book, advertising the book, but also me trying to get the book into libraries and stores in my area, and those all can be videos and getting my word out there. So hopefully, I will still post daily poetry on top of this. I also think a video every week or so that's just me writing could be good for me. Not that I think anyone's particularly interested in my writing process, but more so I need when I record myself, I am more motivated to do it because I think someone's more likely to see them. I also want to do these online discussions I've seen content creators doing, where someone will comment on a video and they'll make a video reply, and then someone else will make a comment and then they'll make a reply. I think that'd be super cool and interesting if I were able to do that. Currently, my only comments really come from my friends and dogs for nuggets, which would be really hard to get any long rabbit hole type discussions going, like I've seen my favorite creators do. But I think it'd be really cool if I can. So, like, subscribe. Future book related projects of mine include Moondust books 2 through 4, as well as other books I've been working on. But I also want to start making little standalone stories in my worlds in the form of long form videos that are essentially audiobooks, posting them on Wattpad and AO3, and they won't be canon, but they'll just be like for fun, so you can get a vibe of my characters before I publish them. And I don't post on those platforms enough, and I need to get into posting, as well as making more rant videos for my characters in books. Before making any rants about Moondust characters, though, I do want every single book to be published, because I don't want to say one thing and then another thing ends up being canon. And I've also considered making what-if videos, where I essentially explore alternate plot lines I considered before making the one I published. And I want to try to post at least one long-form video a month, more if I can, because it'll help me get discovered, and I have a list of projects I'd like to do relating to my characters as well already on my to-do list. Finally, I really ask that you make fan art. This didn't really need to be here, but I really want fan art and fan fictions and fan theories. If you make any, tag me in them or comment where I can find them in my videos. It doesn't have to be a Moondust related video, you can just comment it. I really want a fandom, and it'd make me really happy. That's not the real reason I'm including this in this section, by the way. I'm here to say that here's all the official art. I plan to make a post on my channel and also on Pinterest of them. These ones were specifically made by my friend Dizzy Frog, and she's said she's opening up commissions soon, or maybe she already did. So if you like her art style, or if you just want to see her other work, check her out. I'll probably link her in the description below, but searching Dizzy_Frog will get you to them as well. I can't actually pay them since I'm broke and I'm a smaller channel than her channel, so I can't use exposure either. But I have set up a system for this where if I commission a friend, I make them something in return, like crochet. but if you are still here, I can give her a little exposure, even if I can't give a lot. I want to credit them since they made these great pictures, and I, throughout the begging for fan art, catch your attention so you actually stayed for the remainder of this section. Hello. My book finally arrived. I plan to take it off Amazon and put it on YouTube.
I figured you'd edit up a bit too.
Can't wait to see it.
Did we use
so
the cover?
pretty.
That's even the cover I made.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna change the cover I made.
Can I hold it?
Well, let her first.
I know. I just want to see.
Let her talk for her video.
So we've got the copyright page. I made that at midnight.
So
The dedication. I believe it's something about the bet me made.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then new book smell. I love it.
New book as in brand new, like just made.
All right.
Yeah. And then there's the back about the me and about the book.
I like how you used in proper grammar about the me.
All right.
Well, yeah.
All right.
You can hold it now. Moondust Gifts of Two is on Amazon under the name Willow Evans. Please buy my book if you want to support an indie author. You can also feel free to just comment and not buy it, because I like reading and replying to comments. It's my favorite thing to do, and it boosts the video to others who might buy it. If you've made it this far in the video, I love you, and thanks to everyone who has existed in my vicinity since I started this book.